So here we are, the last day of Gemini for 2022. Thoughts, communications. What is it that seeks to be learned? These are all the Gemini kind of thoughts. What is it that I am curious about? Well, since this is the very last day for the Gemini cycle, Mercury's still going to be dancing through Gemini for a couple more weeks. So nothing really arbitrarily gets cut off, with a hard, cold, fast door closing, kaboom kind of an experience that says, nope, Gemini's done. I don't think you can really shut off any of the signs of the zodiac at any time. There's just shifts that transpire in the energy matrix that bring certain things more to the fore, shall we say. Today, on this last day of Gemini, we're about ready to go into Cancer tomorrow, which is ruled by the moon. The lunar dance today will have the last quarter moon between that moon and the sun, sitting at the last degree of Gemini, which puts the moon up there in the last degree of Pisces. One of the sayings for the lunar cycle, when you look at its 4 quarters, first quarter is crisis and action, because things are, they're action oriented. There's an unfolding new cycle and it reaches that first square. So there's, some energies that don't necessarily see eye to eye that are, in that action phase. And so then you get the full moon where it's like, what is that maximum reflected solar perspective that from a lunar outlook is being enlightened? And then the last quarter moon, crisis in consciousness, the waning moon, a time for reflection. The moon is always about reflection, but the reflections in the waxing phase are a lot more energetic, or shall we say active. The waning phase, we're weighing things consciously as to whether we're really paying attention to or in tune with what it is that lunar perspective is for us to ponder. Monday is that last quarter moon between Pisces, the deepest, most potentially reflective zone of the zodiac, and Gemini, a level of percolating curiosity that really knows no boundaries. I woke up Sunday morning, from the land of dream. And I wrote these words down, which are kind of a reflection of where that dreamscape was pointing me. Journeying to discover aspects of the human psyche that are and have been keeping me from awakening to my soul directives. You can change that pronoun of me and my to us and our. This is the kind of question that I think might be substantially relevant to that shift tomorrow when the sun goes into the sign of Cancer. Cancer is it's a sign of sensitivity ruled by the moon. So everything that has to do with what we feel is placed in that matrix of the table of contents. How do I feel about that psyche perspective of what it is that is my soul directive? And even as I say that, I'm inclined to tune into a deep tonal cadence that I sense is, where is it coming from? Is it coming from deep within planet Earth? Yeah, that is one of the options. Is it that sound actually more of a humming persistence that is the celestial cosmic dance that is going on around us that we are a part of? And again, I would have to say, yes. There's a rootedness that Cancer represents that if you close your eyes, feel your feet on the ground, you might become aware of that connective capacity that we all or each have to this physical planet that we are standing, sitting, or lying upon. This is Cancer. And the question is, how tuned in am I, are you, to your rootedness to this place? Oh, skipping lightly across the surface of this planet, nary a care in the world. And yet without it, this planet, this environmental dance of liveliness. What are you? What am I? Essay questions. We all have our perspectives on this. And I trust that as we move into this Cancerian place, we might pause and really take that moment to tune into that innate connection that we have not only to this planet upon which we dwell, but everything. Lunar connection. Water. Water is the element that, of all the elements, really speaks to the capacity that we have to synthesize, recognize connections that exist. This is the first water sign of the zodiac, Cancer, where we have the potential awakening to how tuned in am I to that sensitivity of being able to feel how connected I am to everything. It is the roots, it's home. Not so much, but inclusive of that physical dwelling within which we dwell. But what is home really? Is it can you see it as a place in your heart? I think that would be definitely worthy of any Cancerian consideration. That lunar dance that takes place every month. Like this month, we're beginning with the moon in that waning quarter, crisis in consciousness. And every month, the moon makes one complete orbit around the zodiac. Next month, and a little bit more. Next month, that last quarter moon will be one sign ahead. And that last quarter moon is going to be between Aries, and Cancer. It's like, yeah, Aries and Cancer. They're sort of right on that cusp right now. It'll be further into the Aries Cancer signs. Yes, thinking about the orbital dance that our moon is bringing for us. Here are some terms that speak to Cancer. The healer, protector, matriarch. Yes, think of that moon. Definitely has a feminine quality to it. The mother, the nurturer, the cook, and the counselor. As I say that last term, the counselor, I'm thinking more of that quality of nurturance that any good counselor will have discovered through their living process as being very necessary to establishing a heart connection with another, so that the counseling doesn't just skitter around on the surface, but really can strike deep into the heart of the matter at hand. It isn't just a mental construct as to what and how things might better transpire. It's more of a open-ended opportunity to sense and feel what might be an appropriate step to take in that moment of counsel that is new, has not been tried before, is waiting for that opening to happen where something that has been lingering around, we could feel it. We didn't know what it was or where it was, but we sensed that we might be able to experience if we but willingly, in this moment, take the chance. That's true counseling. That is opening up the channels of awareness to be more inclusive of things that we may have been inclined to hold at bay because we didn't understand them, or because our previous encounters with matters that were related to them didn't go so well. The learning experience of life. Are you sensitive to those possibilities? Let's take a gander over at our chart for right now. And let's see what kind of dynamics we have in play. Monday. Well, we talked a little bit about Monday. One thing that you can kind of perceive is that all the planets are less than 180 degrees apart, from our Pluto up here at 28 degrees in Capricorn to our sun down here at 29 degrees of Gemini. They're actually all within 150 degrees, or the quincunx aspect of the zodiac. So basically it's the flavor. Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and tomorrow the sun is going to shift into Cancer, which is the opposite sign of Capricorn. And it's going to make its way through this month to somewhere along the way later on in this in this Cancer cycle, to oppose Pluto up here in Capricorn. One thing to keep in mind is that since this is a Cancer month that we're going into, the moon should be, could be, and likely might be more relevant to pay attention to than I would normally be inclined to consider when I do my weekly astrological chatters. Sometimes I'll throw it in if there aren't a lot of other things going on, just because, it's in play. It's always in play. It goes 12 to 13 degrees a day, which works out to about 2.5 degrees per sign of the zodiac. And each month, it goes entirely around the zodiac, plus a little. And since we're in a Cancer month, that lunar part of the equation is going to be the moniker or the designator of just how that solar energetic might be more effectively in play for us if we were but to be inclusive of how we feel about the activities excited by that vital solar dance. And soon enough, basically in a week, the moon is going to surpass the sun. It's going to come down there. We'll have a new moon in Cancer. It'll be actually, I see, it's next week. Sure enough. After which, the moon will be traversing this large zone of space over here where you don't see a whole lot of planets. But as it does this, it's going to oppose Pluto and Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter and Mars and Uranus and Venus and Mercury. It's going to oppose every one of the planets. There will be a full moon, of course, which will be the first won't be the first opposition that it makes. It'll be one of the last oppositions that it makes. So, what is that opposition? These are some words from a friend of mine who's no longer with us, spelling out some considerations of what that oppositional aspect can entail. A flowering of awareness and contradiction at the same time, or through contradiction. Controversy for reconciliation. This is the aspect or the matrix of signs opposed to one another. They represent different sides of the same story. First house, first sign Aries here is self, the experience of what does it mean to be a self. Seventh house, its opposite, is the sign of other. And so to be a self without taking into consideration the perspective that an other might have could prove to be either very lonely on one sense, if we're just a self, as well as extremely limited in what it is our perspective could be without really taking into consideration what somebody else's version of what it means to be a self is. A lot of selves running around on this planet these days who's leaning just a little too dynamically into a self-active ego perspective limits their willingness to really take into consideration somebody else's version of what is going on. Essay. This is still the opposition I'm talking about. Repolarization for resolution. It evokes a choice, separation or transcendence, allowance of differences, challenging relationships. fascination of attraction and projection, facing the shadow. What is that version that seems to be coming from the other that, you know, it irks those deep parts within me? It's like I know my me, and they're trying to give me a version of my me, which is their me, and I'm not comfortable with it. Might this be my shadow? Essay question. Unify duality for symbiotic union. Principle of balance. Aries, ruled by Mars, a striking out in a self version, and Libra, the scales, attempting to balance perspectives that's quite likely oppose each other. So, paying attention this month as the moon begins, well, starting out, we have one whole week left of the moon dancing with Jupiter, then Chiron, then Mars, then Uranus, then the nodal axis, then Venus, and then Mercury, and finally the Sun. Those are connective dance steps. These are opportunities for us to really tune into that lunar capacity of allowing, the awareness of how connected we are to other perspectives, other opportunities, other people. I think the people aspect of that is critical, because the moon is being the quick dancing nightlight that we're if fortunate enough to have clear skies can see dancing across the heavens each night and changing shape and size and brightness as it gives us a variety of opportunities to tune into different aspects of our life experience. And once again, I would say, in that, can you sense that cadence of life unfolding with that lunar dance? Are you tuned into the throb of the earth underneath you and the beat of the cosmic song that is playing all around you all the time? This is a month when we're being invited to pay just a little bit closer attention to those opportunities. On Tuesday, the sun goes into Cancer. I've already mentioned that, but I've just rolled the chart into Tuesday, and you can kind of see that is what is transpiring. And this week we have one other sign shift that's going to take place, and that will be for Venus, which has, enjoyed being at home in Taurus for the past couple of weeks. and is now going to, I'm just kind of looking over some quick notes here. Actually, uh, so many things. Astrology, yeah, I go and I look at so many things. This is an aspect grid for the charts, and this is for the Tuesday that I happen to have drawn up right now. And these little symbols indicate these are all squares taking place. These are trines. Squares are, that challenging opposition kind of tension. It's not really opposition, but the elements of a square are similar to an opposition in that they aren't really inclined to think along similar wavelengths. Trines, they're in the same element, and they're talking to each other very easily. Sextiles, same thing. Conjunctions are when they come together, and that's what I was just talking about, the moon going and conjuncting all those planets over this next week. But anyway, so many tools that I have available for doing astrology considerations that I, oftentimes when I sit down each week to figure what is it that is most relevant to me, because that I'm the one that's tuning in and attempting to present to all of us uh, my perspective on what it is the celestial dance is listening to and asking me to share with you as something that may or may not be as relevant for each of us, but it is in play, relevant to us or not. And sometimes being aware of some things that are transpiring can be helpful so that we don't turn left when we should turn right. I was looking at my, I have basically half of my astrology books in the bookshelves of this office space that I use, and the other half down in an old office space that I used to use that is now more of a library and storage room than anything else. I've got 3 books, each of them titled exactly the same: Predictive Astrology. I bring this up because I rarely look at any of those books. The one that I look at the most is the one by Bernadette Brady, and the reason I look at it is because it has probably the best or most profound descriptions related to the eclipses that take place a couple times a year. And that's about when I look at them. There's a couple times. The other books, back in the day, I used to look at them because they say, what happens when Mars is dancing with you name whatever planet you want, how has Mars energized it? And it's like, I don't really find it a challenge to uh, sense the portrayal of what those kind of aspects really mean anymore. In the early days, the learning capacity of reading through some of the descriptions in those predictive astrology books was helpful. Yeah, no doubt about it. But it's kind of like I've got to the point where I'm actually in conversation with these celestial beings. These are energy beings that are, they're in conversation with me all the time. And, the only time that they strike up the conversation just a little bit more adamantly for me is each week when I sit down to consider, who's saying what to who, and, how can I, take this into my own heart and soul in an effective enough way to be able to describe what it means to me, and at the same time allow you to make your own determinations as to where that value will be gleaned. So here we are, Tuesday. And when I looked at the things that were happening this week on this day as well, we can see that we have a Venus Pluto trine. That's that blue line going right there. Trines mean they're both in the same aspect. They're both in Earth aspects. Venus is in its own sign, so that gives it strength. Pluto is in a Earth sign, but it's retrograde, which means that this is a time when, anytime any planet goes retrograde, this is a time when there's a recapitulation, a rethinking, a reprocessing of the significance that a planet at any particular place in the zodiac is going back over a territory that it's already, progressed forward over. And with Pluto, of all the planets, because it moves so friggin' slow, 245 years, 250 years to make the complete circuit all the way around the zodiac. And so it'll go ahead a few degrees or a couple degrees, and then it'll go back a degree. It'll go a few ahead, back two, a few ahead, back two. So right now, it basically it's on the degree that it went retrograde, and I'd have to look at my where is that? Well, that's interesting. Aha. Buried in the pile of papers. This is my graphic ephemeris I have for the planetary movements, and I have for the actually this is for the planetary movements. No, that's for the declination movements. This is the planetary movement for the year. And so I look at that and I say, well, Pluto went retrograde at Pluto. Where are you hiding? You're down at the bottom. Pluto went retrograde on April 26th. So it's been retrograde for a while at 28 degrees, which it's still at. You can kind of see. Oh, actually, look at that, 28 degrees, 0 minutes. So it's about to go back into 27 degrees. And it stays at 27 degrees until sometime in August, goes back to almost 26 degrees, but not quite, where it will basically go direct. And that is it's sort of in the middle of October. So you can kind of see the slowness of things. So we have this long cycle of Pluto, which is it has the function of basically, and this is with any planet that moves very slow. And you think of basically Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and then all the trans-Neptunian ones, which are currently being considered by a lot of astrologers, not by me. I've got already so many things on my plate that the incredibly, infinitesimally slow movement of those trans-Neptunians, trans-Plutonians, I don't really have the inclination to want to follow the muckies and all those kinds of planetary bodies that are out there. I'm happy that there are astrologers that are doing it, and I bow to the patience that they have to look at something that takes thousands of years to make it around the zodiac. I find a little bit more relevance to the faster moving ones and even the slow moving ones like Saturn through Pluto. There's a significance that taking time to tune into the energies or the area of the zodiac that they happen to be focusing on is where the relevance sits. Being aware of what each of those planets represents, like Pluto, which represents a level of transformation that is total. And how it does that is by investigating. I think that's a good term for what Pluto does. It says, there are things that are buried beneath the surface that I, as Pluto, am curious about. And in investigating them, it exposes or brings to the surface hidden factors for us to look at. And when it's going retrograde, it's moving like almost extra slow and allowing for a churning process to take place, very similar to the slow, very natural composting function of everything that is physical on Mother Earth. You think about that. All beings, all energy, from the insects that only exist for part of a day and then collapse and are recomposted into the earth, to the trees that are thousands of years old and yet eventually will collapse and be consumed and recomposted back into that Mother Earth energy, to the rocks. Now there's a long cycle. Yet wind and rain and movement and fire, they all have a tendency in water to wear away at the rock, draw it back down in small particles over eons, millennia, back into Mother Earth. Sometimes a little bit more dynamic, but no less a composting process. So this Pluto, which is doing its long retrograde dance right now, near the end of Capricorn, is asking us, have we pondered carefully enough the elements of that Cancerian realm, which is the realm of rulership, of organized control, governance, methods of holding things together that may or may not be beneficial for everyone and everything. Kind of depends on your perspective. There are those in positions of authority, another Capricorn term, whose perspective is not the same as the general population. Theoretically, Capricorn stands for integrity, and that is the high road of Capricorn, that things that are done and accomplished are done with integrity. And looking at the political, economic, what should I call it, menage of the way the world is running right now, I would question the capacity of the high Capricorn road to actually be in play as effectively as it could be. Essay moment. Take it and go with it as you will. Anyway, this trine says that, from an Earth perspective, which is practicality, is that we are contemplating things simultaneously on a frequency that should be allowing, from a Venus perspective, which is the faster moving planet in its own sign of Taurus, it's a reflection of the statement I would make is it's a reflection of the capacity of how tuned in are we to, from a Taurus perspective, Mother Earth, the first of the earth signs. And Venus as the ruler of it, besides also ruling Libra, which says how tuned in is the experience of being with one another. Libra, Venus perspective, is how tuned in to Mother Earth am I? Because, Mother Earth is a being as well. It isn't just us humans that are interacting with one another that is in play. Ever. It's always, everything is in play, interacting with one another. So we got this a vision coming from Venus to Pluto up there in Capricorn saying, hey, pay attention to what it is that you're doing to me, Mother Earth. Pay attention to what it is you're doing to us, beings who are part of Mother Earth, in your process of governance and economics and, the utilization of the natural resources on the planet. These are always in play. And so that's what that trine says, that these energies are awakened. They're in play with one another, and pay attention. Okay, the next aspect that I see is also Venus, because on Thursday, Venus is going to shift into Gemini. It's on its way. It looks like it's on its way to catching up with Mercury, but Mercury is that next planet in closer to the sun. It moves a lot faster, so it's not really going to catch up with Mercury anytime soon. The chances of that taking place happen when Mercury goes into retrograde, and that's not going to be happening until the next one is not until September 4th or 9th. Can't read my own writing sometimes. But Venus has just transitioned out of Taurus. We're still tuned in, if we're paying attention, to the connection with this planet that we are a part of. And that's always the case with Venus. And coming into Gemini, it says, might there be things that need to be discussed in relation to how effective is this consideration about all that is under our feet? Gemini, communication, perspective and thinking, the process of learning. Are there lessons that Venus's recent trajectory through Taurus may have brought to light that now could be shared with one another? in some level of a communication. And the irony of what we think of as communication being humans has a lot to do with very similar to what I'm doing, speaking. And yet, communication happens at so many levels that are beyond, more penetrating than just words. And part of the reason that I would emphasize this currently is because of that sun being in Cancer. Can you tune into that tonal resonance of Mother Earth, of that throbbing cadence? Because that is a level of communication that is basically the foundation upon which all of our jabber jabber words are supported. Is it a two-way street? It should be. Those, my friends, are the main aspects for this week. We're awakening to a new zodiacal sign that's asking us to pay attention at a heart level to how we interact with each other, to our connection to whatever level of home we're tuned into, to that cadence of our heart, of the heart of Mother Earth, that may not seem to beckon as adamantly as it should. But I think from a soul perspective, it is our responsibility to tend and take care of this garden planet that we live on. We haven't found another one anywhere near close to supplement us with the same level of care that Mother Earth provides for us. Are you thankful for that? I'm going to let that be the consideration for today. So until next week, stay tuned and pay attention to those tonal sounds that are going on around you all the time. Ciao.